The South African Federation of Trade Unions has rejected the state's bargaining council offer of a 3% wage hike. In the long-running standoff, civil service unions are demanding 8% on the baseline and reject a non-pensionable gratuity. Saftu Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi joins us now to explain why the Federation has decided to declare a dispute in the wage talks. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Vavi. Why is that?
Well, because I think the government is trying to solve its own problems of mismanagement, neoliberalism, austerity programs at the expense of workers, the poor, and the marginalized majority of South Africans. The government imposed a 4-year wage freeze on the public sector, and by doing this, having signed an agreement in 2018, a 3-year agreement, government suddenly on the last year of that agreement simply refused to implement it, and in 2020. So public sector workers received no increase of any kind. In 2021, the government refused again to offer a wage increase and instead forced down the throat of the public sector workers a 1.5% pay progression. Pay progression is what workers in any case are entitled to in terms of the 2018 agreement. And pay progression is nothing but by a improvement within each and every grade for workers to not get stuck in a single grade in the public sector. So instead of the government offering them a wage increase, it offered them what they are entitled to in any case, the 1.5. In addition to that, government gave workers between 1,200 and 1,600 in what they call the gratuity. A gratuity is nothing but a bribe for workers to accept a once-off non-pensionable pay that will make no difference in terms of long-term investment, particularly in their pension fund. And this year, government is now offering a 3%, and the same 3% that the president received will now be received by sweepers, by doctors, police, by clerks, by other service delivery or service-orientated staff in the public service. 3% to somebody earning 2.9 million, as the president is, and a 3% for a worker who's earning 7, 8, 9,000 is two different things. The 2.9 increase was backdated, but also on its own meant that the president will now earn 3.4 million rands. But for the workers who are doing the real donkey work, who are providing direct services and not speeches, and who are making sure that me and you are safe in the streets, who are ensuring that the Home Affairs is functional, and all our hospitals are functional, schools functional, they are proposing that they give them a 3% plus this non-pensionable 1,200 to 1,600. It's actually a regression. It means that the standards of living for the public sector will continue to decline, more so because the CPI this year is hovering between 6.4% and 7.8% sometimes, or even above 8% in some of the weeks because of the massive increases in the food prices, in petrol, in electricity, in the interest rates. And then workers can't afford this 3%. It's an insult. And at least Saftu is saying, give them at least 1% above the CPI so that they can realize a real improvement, even if it is just on 1%, because that's what it will be.
And how is this offer now, requests being received? Because I understand that the next 3 weeks will be crucial for a consideration. Some unions are considering this 3%, while you on the other end are saying that you want more. Have you communicated this latest request to government?
Yes, indeed. The demand for 8% was originally a demand for 10%. We, in the process of negotiations, decreased that to 8%, and we are not willing to go below that 8% from the Saftu point of view. Both of our unions who are represented in the PSCPC are putting their foot down to say 8% or a strike. Our call is to the rest of the public sector unions to also join us. We have declared the dispute already in Saftu through SAPO and NUPSO, and as well as the PSA have declared the dispute. But we're asking more unions to also stop wasting time, because government clearly is not willing to meet us halfway, and to join us in saying that if you don't improve this to 8%, face a strike, and the strike will be a protracted strike. It will be a strike to reverse the gains, to reverse this massive pounding on the working conditions of the public sector by the government since 2020, when it refused to implement any kind of an increase.
So you're saying that government does indeed have the ability to ensure that the increase is met, because they can redirect funds. Talk to us about redirecting funds and what you believe can be moved to ensure that workers do indeed get this increase.
No, it's a straightforward thing. Government must abandon neoliberalism, must abandon its austerity program, must stop cutting and freezing wages of workers, must stop cutting the services such as healthcare, education, policing, home affairs, correctional services, the defense, which is currently on its knees, precisely because of this aggressive budget cuts by the government. Instead of cutting the budgets, government must understand that this country, South Africa, has a history where we have tolerated greater levels and greater numbers of GDP to the debt ratio. At some point, we were hovering at 115% of debt to the GDP, and the skies didn't fall. Instead, during that period of the 1930s, South Africa saw and witnessed its greatest levels of growth, industrialization, building of the state-owned enterprises, and massive job creation. At those times, it was the days of the job reservations for white workers, but in millions of African black workers also benefited. So that's the first point we're trying to ask the government to do: abandon neoliberalism. Yeah. The second thing, we're asking government to introduce a solidarity tax and wealth tax. The corporates, the moneyed class in this country, is putting in the back pockets a cool 1.8 trillion rands that they won't invest. They are putting that money in their banks, and through this very conservative monetary policy that is driving down an inflation, or chasing an inflation target of between 3 and 6%, government is forced to use high interest rate regime. And the people who are embarking on an investment strike are benefiting at some point up to 4%, meaning that they're making a 4% increase or profit of the money that they will not invest in the economy, so that it can be involved in creating jobs and as it is circulating in the productive sectors of the economy. Yes. And secondly, and we're asking government to take steps to stop illicit cash outflows from this economy. And we're losing up to 400 billion rands according to the government. We're losing up to 250 billion rands in corruption that is led by the guys in suits and who owns private jets and who are stealing the procurement budget of the government to the tune of between 35 and 40%. There's money in South Africa. The problem is that 10% of the population owns 90% of the wealth, and government is introducing no measures to ensure that the 10% that owns that 90% contribute as it did contribute during the apartheid era. If you remember that,
yes,
at the highest point, the corporate taxes in this country were sitting at 54%. They have been driven down to 27% by the same people who turn around and say, we have no money. There is money. The money is just
Mr.
in
Vavi,
few hands.
let's veer off slightly. As you and I speak, our breaking news this evening is that the Zimbabwean permits have been extended to the 30th of June. Your reaction to that?
Well, I have no money to speak about that particular issue. And there has been a regime, however, that have lasted for years now to allow Zimbabweans to benefit from the South African economy, precisely because, in our view, this government is taking responsibility because the mess in Zimbabwe happened under their watch. It is they who robbed the people of Zimbabwe their right to free and fair elections and impose a government of national unity when ZANU-PF have lost elections and way back under the presidency of Thabo Mbeki. And I guess they have been feeling guilty and allowing the special permits to continue to be extended over and over, because I guess that the Zimbabweans had a better chance of fixing their problem with a change in government. Unfortunately, that government remains the same. That government, you can see its leaders are growing fat and fat, whilst its people are being forced into a life of exile. Doctors, nurses are standing as security guards. Workers are standing in the robots of South Africa begging. And this is what we are warning against in South Africa, that if we do not stop this slide towards a failed state, we will meet the Zimbabweans in Limpopo River. We will be going up in search of better opportunities in the African continent or even drowning in the seas of the Mediterranean in search of opportunities in Europe, whilst our political leadership remains here, fat, overfed, and dying from the disease of overeating.
Very well. Thank you so much for weighing in on that discussion, also reacting to our breaking news. Saftu Secretary General Zwelinzima Vavi expanding there on some of the leading stories. Let's remind you